both.
At 6, the smiling suspect. These are new images of the man police are hunting for after a top health executive was shot dead in New York yesterday. 50-year-old Brian Thompson was shot in the back and leg. Forensic teams have found shell casings with messages written in marker pen. Could they provide a motive? Also tonight, the Prime Minister launches his plan for change with 6 milestones to achieve over the course of this Parliament. A big surge in flu cases in hospital compared to this time last year as NHS England bosses warn of what they're calling a quaddemic. We'll explain what that is. And the Bitcoin boom from $16,000 each 2 years ago to $100,000 now. Where's this cryptocurrency going? The American rugby player and social media star Ilona Maher is heading to England. Why the Bristol Bears are having to find bigger stadiums.
On BBC London, Tower Hamlets becomes the latest council to set up a winter fuel payment for elderly residents. We look at how other boroughs are helping their pensioners to stay warm.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. Police in New York have released new images of a man they are searching for after the head of the biggest health insurance company in the US was shot and killed in the street yesterday morning. Police have called it a targeted attack. Well, let's go straight to New York. Our correspondent Neda Tawfik is there for us now. Neda.
Sophie, the last time the suspect was seen here in New York was yesterday morning as he was riding an electric bike through and out of Central Park, just several blocks from here. Now, in the meantime, police have been searching other locations here in the city and have a wealth of clues to try to piece together a motive and who the suspect is.
The fevered hunt continues for Brian Thompson's killer. Investigators have been interviewing witnesses and piecing through evidence to understand why the 50-year-old CEO of one of the country's largest insurance companies was gunned down in broad daylight. This afternoon, the NYPD released a new photo of the suspect with his full features visible on CCTV. Police are using facial recognition technology to identify him. On the scene, recovered shell casings offered some clues. Investigators found the words deny, defend, depose written on them, giving more weight to the police's belief that this was targeted. The words appear to be a reference to an American saying about the tactics used by insurance companies to try to avoid paying people's health care claims. The suspect visited several locations, including Starbucks. Police collected what they believe was his water bottle and coffee cup, which could provide DNA evidence. Additional footage shows the suspect on a cell phone as he walked to the Midtown Hilton Hotel. Detectives found a phone that they believe is his in an alley that the gunman ran through after he escaped the scene.
This is a fairly well thought out crime. You can see him with the suppressor in the video. He has a shooter's stance. He's masked, and he's thought about his escape route. All of these things make it challenging, but far from out of the ability range of the NYPD. They have great resources to nail down a crime like this.
This murder mystery of a relatively unknown executive and the graphic video of the brazen incident has captured attention. As chilling as it was, not all of the reaction has been sympathetic. Brian Thompson led United Healthcare based in Minnesota, a successful insurance company notorious for denying people's medical claims. To some, he represents everything wrong with America's for-profit health insurance system, where companies can make huge sums of money while many people go without basic care.
Neda Tawfik, BBC News, New York.
Our analysis editor, Ros Atkins, has been looking more closely at how the attack unfolded.
Brian Thompson was shot dead on Wednesday morning. He was attacked a few blocks from Times Square and Central Park, just outside the Hilton Hotel in Manhattan. The first known sighting of the man who shot him is by the 57th Street subway station. This CCTV image, obtained by the Washington Post, is time-stamped 6:15. The next sighting, according to US media, is 6:17 at a Starbucks. The police released this image from inside the cafe. Then at 6:30, we see the same man in this video, published by the New York Times. He appears to be on the phone. Nearby is the Hilton Hotel. Brian Thompson was attending a conference there and, according to police, at around 6:40, the gunman arrived and waited. Minutes later, this video shows Mr. Thompson by the hotel. The gunman approaches and takes aim. He ignores a bystander close by who flees as the shooting begins. Also, if we zoom in, after the initial shot, the gun appears to temporarily jam. And one firearms expert told us the gun may have a silencer. After the shooting, Brian Thompson is left lying on the floor. His assailant runs across the street. Police say he then walked into an alleyway and then headed north towards Central Park on a bike. We have this image from the police showing someone in the same outfit with the same rucksack. According to police, he then rode into Central Park. By this point, it's 6:48. The final possible sighting is on West 85th Street. Our US partner CBS reports police are analysing this surveillance footage from just before 7 o'clock. 13 minutes later, 7:12, at the Mount Sinai West Hospital, Brian Thompson was pronounced dead. Across New York, the search continues for his killer, and police have now released more images. They say this man is a person of interest. Ros Atkins, BBC News.
Britain is broken but not beyond repair. That's what the Prime Minister has been saying as he set out what he's calling his plan for change, with a focus on improving living standards, not just boosting growth. 5 months after winning the election, Sir Keir Starmer set out 6 targets, including building affordable homes, reducing NHS waiting times and making streets safer, and explained how he intends to achieve them. The Conservatives have called it a desperate attempted relaunch. Our political editor Chris Mason reports.
They filmed Mission Impossible here. There's plenty of 007 heritage too. But the extras today a little less glamorous. As us reporters are ushered in, the supporting cabinet ministers flick through the script, and the main man takes to the stage.
If I keep coming back here, I could be the next James Bond.
This event at Pinewood Studios in Buckinghamshire looked, felt and sounded like a pre-election do, not one 5 months afterwards.
We face an almighty challenge to hit these milestones by the end of this Parliament. We're starting from ground zero.
A repeated theme today was an impatience to get things done and get stuff built.
The NIMBYs, the regulators, the blockers, the bureaucrats, the alliance of naysayers. Well, we say to them, you no longer have the upper hand. Britain says yes.
And the Prime Minister had 2 audiences. Yes, the country at large, but also the civil service.
This plan will land on desks across Whitehall with the heavy thud of a gauntlet being thrown down. I do think that too many people in Whitehall are comfortable in the tepid bath of managed decline.
You won't be surprised when I tell you plenty of civil servants don't think much of that remark. This event was all about the Prime Minister wanting to prioritise and point to what matters to him. But prioritising some things means not prioritising others. You've set out these milestones this morning. Immigration isn't one of them, but you have talked about it and it is in the document. And so people might wonder whether it's a priority or not.
But we'll bring in immigration down, both legal and illegal. But I take that as the basic security that any government must deliver, and we build the 5 missions, the plan for change on that.
All this, the staging, the promises, the answers, an attempt to talk about things that matter to millions and put their bumpy start behind them. Farmers complaining about inheritance tax. Plenty of pensioners complaining because they'll
no longer receive the winter fuel payment from this year onwards.
Businesses paying more tax.
It's catastrophic.
Sue Gray resigns.
And the Chief of Staff out the door only 3 months in. Perhaps little wonder opponents see today as a relaunch.
It's all very well them coming up with a bunch of pledges today, but they've got a track record of not doing what they say they are going to do, so why should we listen to them now?
For the Prime Minister, he hopes this amounts to a licence to be listened to. The big challenge, turning the script into reality. Chris Mason, BBC News, at Pinewood Studios.
So will the government be able to hit these targets? Ben Chu from BBC Verify is here to tell us. Ben.
Yes, Sophie. Those new measurable milestones are to be achieved by 2029, which the PM says voters can use to judge the performance of this Labour government. They are growing household incomes, building more houses, delivering more neighbourhood police, improving early years education, decarbonising power and getting hospital waiting times down. Of these targets, it's the ones on housing, hospitals and power, which most experts judge will be the hardest to meet. The PM pledged 1.5 million new homes over the course of the Parliament. That's defined as net additional dwellings in England. That 1.5 million would equate to around 300,000 per year. Only around 221,000 were delivered in 2023-24, down on the previous year. It's been decades since this number of new homes was delivered in any year. On hospital waiting times, the PM said he will hit the official target that 92% of patients in England waiting for elective treatment should be seen within 18 weeks. In September 2024, only around 59% of treatments people were waiting for had started within 18 weeks. The last time the 92% target was achieved was back in 2015. And finally, to be on track for 95% clean power for the UK by 2030 would require big increases in our national solar and wind power generating capacity, as you can see here. The government's independent energy planner recently concluded this is possible, but also warns achieving it will be at the limit of what is feasible. Sophie.
Ben, thank you. Well, meanwhile, hospitals are busier than ever at this time of year, with the NHS facing what's been called a quademic. Flu cases are 4 times higher than at this point last year. More than 1,000 patients in hospital beds with flu every day this week in England, compared to just under 250 at the same time last year. There's also rising numbers of cases of COVID, norovirus and another respiratory virus called RSV. Hugh Pym is outside a hospital in South London. Hospital bosses sounding a warning here, Hugh.
Yes, they are, Sophie, busier than ever at this time of year. Winter has come early, essentially, is what they're saying. And those 4 viruses are causing concern, particularly norovirus, the winter vomiting bug in hospitals. That's gone up a lot. And flu, 4 times more cases in hospitals than this time last year. COVID levels are relatively stable, but on the increase as well. Now, the worry about flu is this just an early flu wave, which might subside by January when it normally takes hold? Or is it the beginning of something really quite sustained, like 2 years ago, when there were really big increases in flu, causing a lot of pressure in December? Now, health chiefs are saying, given how busy it is now, they are concerned. Occupancy levels in hospitals are about 95%, that's very high, and they're urging anyone who's eligible for a vaccination for these viruses to go out and get it done.
Hugh Pym, thank you. Now it's Thursday, it's question time. Here's Fiona with what's coming up.
Tonight, we the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, along with Tony Blair's former spin doctor Alistair Campbell, joined by the government and the Conservatives, all along with an expectant audience here in Lincoln in the East Midlands. We're on iPlayer from 9 and BBC One after the 10 o'clock news.
Fiona, thank you. A medicine known as the King Kong of weight loss jabs is to be prescribed on the NHS in England, but it could take 12 years for everyone to receive it. The healthcare watchdog NICE says that length of time is necessary so health services aren't overwhelmed by demand for the drug. Our health correspondent Sophie Hutchinson reports.
Maya Winter was turned down for NHS weight loss treatment despite having severe obesity with a BMI of just over 53. She bought the weight loss drug Mounjaro privately from an online pharmacy and has since lost 5 stone.
It feels amazing. I feel so much better, and my body just had my 6 monthly bloods done and my body's coping a lot better and all my bloods are looking very good.
Around 60% of adults are either overweight or obese in England, risking their health and putting pressure on the NHS. But only 40,000 are treated by NHS weight loss services each year. To improve that, the health watchdog NICE has given the green light for several million obese people to be treated with tirzepatide, branded as Mounjaro. It's an appetite suppressant which affects two hormones and makes you feel fuller. But the drug's rollout will be over a record 12 years, so as not to overwhelm the NHS.
The drugs are expensive and therefore we cannot treat several million people with these drugs at this moment in time. And also the NHS is not ready to treat several million people with these drugs. We have to develop the systems, as it were, to be able to prescribe these drugs in a safe and appropriate manner within the NHS.
That's because NICE has only agreed to the rollout if prescriptions are accompanied with diet and exercise support services. So who will get this weight loss drug first? 220,000 people with the highest clinical need will be part of an initial 3-year phase. They must have obesity with a BMI higher than 35 and at least one weight-related illness, such as cardiovascular disease. But some experts say they're appalled by the 12-year rollout for the drug and are dismayed by the current state of England's weight loss services.
Access is very difficult. It's the old postcode lottery. There are some areas of the country where you simply can't get access to weight loss services. There are others, around 50% of the country, where you can. But the waiting lists have gone up hugely in the last year or so. And this is something which is also an issue in terms of delivering the service.
More details of the drug's rollout will be published next year, but most agree getting weight loss services right is crucial for our future health and the NHS. Sophie Hutchinson, BBC News.
The time is just after 6:15. Our top story this evening. New York police release new images of their suspect after the head of one of America's biggest health insurance companies is shot dead. And we'll bring you the latest weather forecast ahead of Storm Dara arriving this weekend.
And on BBC London, the station's visually mapped so passengers can check them out before travelling. We take a look around as well. And underwear made from seaweed, we explore the healing properties of the alternative.
The French President Emmanuel Macron will address the nation tonight after the Prime Minister was ousted yesterday in a vote of no confidence. Michel Barnier, who'd been in office for just 3 months, has resigned but will stay in post until a successor is chosen. Well, Mark Lowen joins us now from Paris. Mark, the stakes are very high for the President tonight.
Very high for France and also for President Macron personally, Sophie. For France, because it has been thrown into political turmoil at a terrible time where there are concerns about its economy. Its deficit is currently double that of the limit imposed by the European Union. There are wars, of course, on Europe's doorstep, and Donald Trump is about to enter the White House when Europe as a whole will be called to be a strong counterbalance to the Trump presidency, and France, frankly, is proving anything but. But also stakes high for Macron personally, because he is widely blamed, Sophie, for leading France into this division and into this polarisation, dividing France into far left and far right. Now, French media are reporting that President Macron, when he speaks here at the Elysée in 45 minutes, will not actually name a successor. It is hard, frankly, to imagine somebody who can unite this extremely fragmented, divided French parliament. And also pretty hard to imagine how President Macron can rescue his tattered reputation and legacy at the moment. Now, Sophie, the day after tomorrow, Mr. Macron is due to inaugurate Notre Dame. But for many people, looking at that inauguration 5 years after it was ravaged by fire, they will not be admiring a cathedral. They will instead be despairing that France cannot get its political house in order.
Learn in Paris, thank you. A couple who buried their 3-year-old son in their back garden have been convicted of causing or allowing the death of a child. It's believed the toddler died from starvation. His remains were found in a shallow grave at the former family home in Birmingham. His parents will be sentenced next week. This report from our Midlands correspondent Phil Mackey contains details of that abuse.
Abiel was a smiling, happy little boy before things spiralled out of control. His apparently doting parents' increasingly strange beliefs ultimately cost him his life. 3 years after they filmed those videos, his parents were arrested.
Come into my private space.
There was also a young child living in their cramped, squalid caravan. They were so badly malnourished they could barely walk.
Leave now.
If they hadn't been taken to hospital, at least one of them may have died.
I hardly move.
The child, who we can't identify, survived and is being cared for. It was after their arrest Abiya's fate was discovered. He died 2 years earlier and been buried in the garden of their former home in Birmingham. His remains were found in this shallow grave.
Still recording?
While they lived there, the couple posted increasingly bizarre videos of themselves.
Come see me.
Although Yashar Ayala had studied medical genetics at university, he rejected modern medicine after reading online conspiracy theories. They drew on West African religion and New Age mysticism and practiced a very strict form of veganism. It's been impossible to establish the exact cause of Abiya's death, but experts said he was severely malnourished.
Ty is an extremely arrogant man who placed himself as the head of a fictional country, to the extent that they'd even made their own passports. Such was the extent of their delusion. And his only one disciple, as she described herself, was Naomi, being Abiya's mother, who I think is an incredibly weak-minded individual and has gone along with whatever he said.
One of the many tragedies in this case is that there were lots of people raising concerns about what was going on inside the house. Neighbours confronted the family, the police visited, but there was no intervention, and Abiya died and was buried in the garden without anyone knowing.
Do you have a child here? Now you can get out. It's none of your business.
In 2021, the police did look for Abiya, but by then he was already dead, and they didn't find his makeshift grave.
My child's name is Abiya. Where is he? That's not your business. Why you...
Later, there was a mix-up when they checked records, and so it wasn't followed up. During their trial, they showed no remorse. A safeguarding review is being carried out to see whether procedures can be improved. Phil Mackey, BBC News, Birmingham.
The three-time Olympic gold medalist Charlotte Dujardin says she fully respects the decision by the dressage governing body to ban her from the sport for a year. She pulled out of the Paris Olympics after video emerged of her repeatedly whipping her horse. Ms. Dujardin says she'll forever aim to do better. A nun is among 32 people arrested in Italy as part of an investigation into the mafia. Authorities allege Sister Anna Donnelly, who volunteers in prisons, passed messages between the criminal group and its members behind bars. Now, the price of Bitcoin has hit a record high, breaking through the $100,000 mark for the first time. It was worth just $16,000 2 years ago. It's been surging in value since Donald Trump's election victory last month. He's widely expected to ease regulations around cryptocurrencies, as our business editor Simon Jack reports.
Bitcoin has baffled some and bewitched others, but few things, if any, in history have risen faster in value. Worth next to nothing 10 years ago, it's now worth over $100,000 per coin, making some people very rich along the way.
Investing in Bitcoin has completely changed my life. I was given a $1,000 check from my grandmother back in 2011, and I put that all into Bitcoin back when Bitcoin was $10 a pop.
With each Bitcoin now worth over $100,000, Eric's 100 Bitcoin is now worth $10 million, around £8 million. But it's not been a smooth ride, anything but. Have a look at this. It was worth next to nothing for years. Then it started rising, and then basically it gets very volatile. If you bought in 2022, it fell 50% very, very quickly, very uncomfortable. But look, it recovered, and here it's risen 50% since Donald Trump, big advocate of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, won the US election, and he's proposed other Bitcoin fans to key financial positions in the US government. So what is Bitcoin? Well, for a start, there are no physical coins or notes. Each coin or fraction of a coin is basically a computer file that you keep in an electronic wallet, accessible via a device like a phone. Bitcoins are created when powerful computers solve complex mathematical problems and are rewarded with Bitcoin, which they can keep or sell. This process is called mining. Bitcoin founders set a maximum of 21 million Bitcoins that will ever exist, and they get harder and harder to obtain. So like gold, there is a finite supply. And Bitcoin can be transferred anonymously and internationally, meaning it works outside the usual regulated banking system.
We don't know where it's necessarily going to go next.
For some, that's part of the appeal, but it's also a risk.
Some people have made money, but a lot of people have lost money over the years. People have to make up their own minds, but they've got to be aware that it doesn't just go up. It is also incredibly volatile. It's fallen more than 50% in 2022. So it doesn't just move up in a straight line. Added to that, it's unregulated. If you lose your money in Bitcoin, that's it. No one is going to protect you.
Whether you think it's a dangerous bubble, a currency perfect for criminals, or a revolution in how money works, Bitcoins in circulation now total $2 trillion, making it hard to ignore. Simon Jack, BBC News.
Now, in the last few minutes, the Metropolitan Police have asked the BBC to pause the publication of its report into what the corporation did and did not know about allegations about the behaviour of former BBC Radio 1 and 1 Extra DJ Tim Westwood. He has denied claims of misconduct. Well, our correspondent Joe Inwood is with me now. Tell us more about this development.
So this comes back to an investigation that the BBC published along with The Guardian in 2022. They found that 18 women had allegations against Tim Westwood of predatory behaviour, unwanted behaviour and touching. Now, those events were alleged to have taken place between 1992 and 2017. In the wake of that, the BBC got an external QC, Gemma White, to put together a report, as you say, into what they did and didn't know, which is supposed to take 6 months. But we found out today that the Met, who are obviously also looking into these serious claims, have asked the BBC to pause any publication of that. We've got a statement from the Met. They say, well, consultation with the CPS is ongoing. We have asked the BBC to pause the publication of their report to consider any potential impact on the investigation. Now, it's understood that Tim Westwood has been spoken to under caution 4 times since the initial publication of the investigation. And the police have said the things they're looking into took place between 1982 and 2016. They haven't given us much detail, but they say a man in his 60s has been spoken to under caution, but no arrests have been made. Tim Westwood, as you say, denies all allegations.
Joe, thank you. Now, this is Ilona Maher. She is an American rugby player, and with 4 million followers on Instagram, she's the most followed rugby star on social media. Now she's coming to England after signing to play for Bristol Bears in the top division of the women's game. So many fans want to see her make her debut next month that the club has had to move to a bigger stadium. Sarah Orchard has been to meet her.
Get out of my way, sit down, and this is Ilona Maher.
Ilona Maher won a bronze medal with the USA Rugby Sevens team at the Paris Olympics last summer.
I play for the USA and I'm here at the Olympics, and I'm going to test out the cardboard beds for y'all doing various activities.
But she's best known for her social media following of 4.6 million on Instagram and 3.3 million on TikTok.
As a female rugby player, I have to do 10 times as much off the field. I can't just play the sport I love. I'm not going to make millions playing rugby. I'm not even going to make 6 figures playing rugby. That's the sad truth. I'm not going to be like a men's player, so I can't put all my focus here. I have to put it in everything else, and somehow that's translated into being the biggest star in rugby.
Maher's extensive CV also includes being a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model and recently finishing as a runner-up on the US version of Strictly, Dancing with the Stars.
She's basically changed the face of the sport. Already people are really interested about wanting to watch her. So they're like, how do I get the right broadcasting channel to make sure I can watch her? How do I get merchandise with her name on it? So look, this woman is absolutely amazing and is going to change the way women's rugby is seen over here in England too.
South Africa's Siya Kolisi and France's Antoine Dupont are 2 of the most popular men's rugby players on the planet right now. But Maher's popularity is starting to tower above both of them. And it's not just what she does on a rugby pitch. It's her messages around body positivity for young women in particular that has gained her millions of fans.
You can be beautiful and wear lipstick. I wear lipstick when I play rugby because I just feel like I don't have to sacrifice one or the other. Like, I can be a beast on the field, but also feel beautiful and wear lipstick. It's up for you to define your own femininity or whatever it is.
Maher's focus is now how to switch from 7s to 15-a-side rugby in time for the Women's Rugby World Cup in England next year, where the opening match of that tournament just happens to be England's Red Roses against the USA Eagles. Sarah Orchard, BBC News, Bristol.
And you can listen to the full interview on the Rugby Union Weekly podcast. That is on BBC Sounds. Now, lots of weather news coming up. Elizabeth Rizzini is with us. Hello.
Hello, thank you, Sophie. Well, if you think the weather's bad at the moment, it's going to get even worse as we head through the weekend with our next named storm, Storm Dara. Just bear it in mind if you've got pre-Christmas plans or indeed if you're travelling through the weekend, especially on Saturday, damaging gusts of wind. That'll be the biggest impact, but there's also the risk of flooding, especially in the northwest, and there'll be some snow, especially over the Scottish hills, even maybe to lower levels across Scotland as well. But here is the storm out in the Atlantic, huge, massive cloud barrelling towards us. You'll notice there's some cloud around at the moment. It's that's producing the heavy rain for the rest of the evening, the strong gusty winds, but that's all going to clear away over the next couple of hours, so it will turn dry and clearer. And it's a chillier start to the day tomorrow, but it should stay frost-free, mostly because it's still really rather breezy. But tomorrow, the calm before the storm, a fairly quiet day, particularly towards the eastern half of the UK, where we'll keep the sunshine longest. High clouds spreading eastwards, and it turns very wet, very windy across Northern Ireland and towards these western coasts by the end of the day, feeling a little chillier too. But here comes the storm. Look at the tight squeeze on those isobars towards Irish sea coast through the small hours of Saturday. The strongest of the winds transferring to North Sea facing coasts by the time it gets to the afternoon. But these are the areas we're most concerned about, where we have an amber weather warning, second highest level of alert. Some places here could see gusts of wind, especially towards exposed coastal areas, of up to 70 to 80 miles an hour. It's enough to bring down, of course, some trees and certainly the branches of trees. Travel disruption to be expected. And it's all accompanied by some very heavy rain too, falling on already saturated ground, especially in the north and the west. Strongest gusts of wind towards North Sea facing coast through the second half of the day, but even inland across England and Wales, expect to see gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour. It's going to be feeling cold. You won't notice it too much. It'll just be highly unpleasant outside, and there are loads of weather warnings. All of the details on those are on the BBC Weather website, so do keep up to date. Sophie.
Elizabeth, thank you. That's it from the BBC News at 6. Clive will be here with all the latest at 10. Right now, though, it's time to join our news colleagues for the news where you are. Goodbye.